Sheriff Richard Mack is the founder of the constitutional sheriff's movement. He's been on The Truth before. We talked to him about his book, which is entitled The Democrat Murder of America. Wow, that's a bold title. Welcome back to the show, Sheriff Mack.
Thanks, John. It's great to be back with you. Every time I hear that title, it really kind of sends chills up and down my spine because it's all true, especially when you look at the subtitle, The Democrat Murder of America, Demagoguery in the First Degree. And they're guilty of all of that. First of all, the Democrat Party is guilty of treason. They're guilty of cheating. They're guilty of lying. They're guilty of conspiring with the national media to destroy our country and to destroy anybody that gets in their way. And yes, they will do anything: lie, cheat, steal, commit fraud, bring in criminals from all over the world, and murder. And we're ready. We're ready to go to court if they want to sue us for defamation, because they have no standing in any of that, because we'll be glad to prove every charge that we make in the book.
Sheriff, you and I are in violent agreement. I mean, it is just bewildering to me.
Yes.
I mean, it's like I'm living in an alternate reality that they have politicized law enforcement and prevented them from enforcing the laws that they voted to enact.
Yes.
It boggles the mind how people could be so duplicitous and completely lack a conscience. I mean, I think that there's a word for that, and I think it's called sociopath. And when I see Adam Schiff doubling down on the fact that he had evidence of President Trump colluding with Russia, and just this week, Tulsi Gabbard, on her way out, declassified a document that was authored by the intelligence community in 2018 that was decisively stated that there was no evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. Yet he goes on national television as the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee and signed a receipt that he had read that document, knowingly lied to the American people, knowingly perpetrated a 3-year investigation into the duly elected president, knowingly caused the country to go through an impeachment that was based on a lie. Where is the accountability? That's what I want to know. Where is the accountability?
Well, we hope a lot of it is in this book, and because they are such liars. And the way the book came about is I was actually on a podcast about 6 months ago with Daniel Perkins, and he's not really well known in the freedom circuit because he's an author and a very prolific one, very successful one, but he writes fiction and he writes books for children. And he's done a lot of great works. I had never heard of him before he had me on his podcast.
Yeah, me either.
And then I actually, during the podcast, he asked me if I had written any books. And I said, yeah, I've written 8 books. And one is a novel. It's a fiction book, but it has lots of nonfiction in it of stuff that actually happened to me in my law enforcement career. But so he said, well, I'm going to send you a Zoom link as soon as we're done here, and I want you to show me your books. Well, I showed them to him, and he said, I want to write a book with you. We've got to write a book this year for the 2026 midterms. And I said, great, let's do it. And then he told me what he wanted to do, and I came up with the title, and then we kind of worked it out together. He loved it. He loved the cover. Have you seen the cover yet of the book?
Yeah, I got it right here in my hands.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, if you want to show it to your audience here, that's great with me, because it's very bold, just like the title.
It does. It is an attention getter, if nothing less, or nothing else. But I totally agree with you. And I've been saying it, I've been sensing it, and you know.
Put it up. Wait. Put it up closer to where the back of Okay, now take it to, yeah, right. And then a little bit. Okay, everybody see that. It has a jackass. That's the book. The big capital blowing up in the background is on the back. But the front cover is the jackass stabbing the Statue of Liberty in the back.
Wow.
Yeah.
I want to. Can I get an autographed copy of the book? I'll send you. How much is it? Let's see.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Where do we buy it? On Amazon, I would imagine.
We don't have it on Amazon yet. The ebook is available right now at murderofamerica.com. Murderofamerica.com. www.murderofamerica.com. All one word. And any of you can get the ebook right now. The first printing of the paperback book will be ready in about 4 or 5 days.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go buy the ebook. I'm preparing a talk that I'm giving on July the 8th, right after we celebrate the 250th anniversary of our country, to the Palm Beach Christian Men's Association. And I asked them if it could have political overtones, and they said yes. My intention is not to be political. My intention is not to put forth my own bias, but my intention is to tell the truth about how endangered this country is, because we have got people from within that I am convinced are trying to undo us. And I don't know what the end game is that they want to do, but if I was going to try and architect how to destroy the greatest country on earth, I would do exactly what these people are doing over and over and over again. You know, we just saw, what's the name of that outfit? The Southern
Poverty Law Center. They've been going after me for 30 years, and they did exactly to me what they just got indicted for.
Yeah.
And I'm letting everybody know I want to testify.
Well, I'd like to testify also, not with specific knowledge about that NGO, but I have worked in the worst zip code in America for the last 20 years. It's called English Avenue, and it's in Atlanta, Georgia. It is the worst zip code for HIV per capita of any zip code in America. They have obesity, diabetes, illiteracy, homelessness, joblessness, hopelessness.
Yeah.
And I've gone into that neighborhood for 20 years, as have others now that have joined us to try and help rehabilitate. The thing that just sticks out to me, there are 6,000 people that live in this zip code. The people that I know, and hundreds on a first name basis, and they all know me, and I roam the streets without fear because they embrace me, they love me, and I love them. They are kind, God-fearing human beings. But the leadership actually had the nerve to picket me when we went there one day for a fundraiser that we traditionally held at the Lindsay Street Baptist Church. Rich Buckhead, go home. We don't want your money. When we were there with no agenda other than to help people that needed it. And now today, 20 years later, the neighborhood is much, much better, largely due to the efforts of the Arthur Blank Foundation. He is one of the founders of Home Depot and owns the Atlanta Falcons, and Dan Cathy, who owns Chick-fil-A. They followed in our footsteps every step of the way, but they had the capacity. And that's what I had dreamed of, is that the other people would come and join the party. And it has been a huge success. But the point I'm trying to make is I don't see them when I'm there as black. I see them as human. And I don't think they see me as white. But the leadership has gone berserk to try and stop us and divide us and to invoke race. And I'm just sick of it. And I see it repeated time and again across this country.
I would love to be invited to that sometime.
Well, I'd welcome you. I'd take you there personally, and we'll walk the streets, and
Let's
you
do
can
it.
talk to the very people I'm speaking of. They are just sweet, nice people, and I've had the pleasure of they invite me every Thanksgiving to come and give the message at the Lindsay Street Baptist Church, and it fills my heart with joy to see the goodness, the real goodness in these people. And the only difference between them and you and me is that they got they drew a bad card in life. They were born into their circumstances, but they don't hate. They don't hate. Other than Abel Mabel Thomas, the state representative from that area, I've never received one negative or bad word, none. But the leadership. And I asked the late Ivory Young, who was a good friend of mine, a city councilman in Atlanta. I said, Ivory, why do they treat me? Why do they treat us the way they do? He said, John, come on, you know.
You're stomping on their territory. You're stomping on their territory.
They are the poverty pimps. They don't want it to change.
Right.
That's their power.
Yeah, they promote racism, just like the Southern Poverty Law Center. They promote it, or they're out of work. And the fear mongering, all of this is in the book. Fear mongering, the race baiting, and you reminded me of something else. I've just got to tell you about the book. Do you remember Nikita Khrushchev
Oh,
from
sure.
Russia?
Banged his foot on the podium at the UN.
Yeah.
Famously.
Well, he when I was a kid, he scared me to death.
Yeah.
He was ugly. He was mean looking, and he was always yelling when he was giving a speech. He was always pounding his fist and yelling, and he threatened America with a warning, with almost a prophecy, if you will, because we all thought he was crazy at the time, and everything he warned us about has come to fruition. Everything that he predicted would happen to America. He said, "You Americans are so gullible. You say you're against communism. You say you're against socialism, but you will wake up one day and realize that you took enough socialism, piecemeal socialism, that you'll all wake up one day and be a communist country." And everything that he warned us about is actually being brought to life.
Well, you can thank Franklin Delano Roosevelt for starting it.
Yeah.
Lyndon Baines Johnson for fueling it.
Yes.
And a long lineage of politicians that have fed
Let me
into
make
it
one other point about
for
that.
political gain.
The end point I'm making is that the Democrat Party has done everything that makes true what Nikita Khrushchev warned us about.
Yeah.
His threats to us have been made true by the Democrat Party, 100%.
Well, it was the Democrats that were members of the Ku Klux Klan.
Yeah, they formed it.
It was the Democrats that fought ending slavery. It was Abraham Lincoln, the first Republican president of the United States, who created a civil war over ending slavery, and he successfully did so. And it was the Republicans that pushed back against the Dixiecrats, from my home state of Georgia, for instance, that did not want to pass the Civil Rights Act. Yet they're the ones who speak so virtuously about ending racism out of one side of their mouth, but what their deeds do, like with the Southern Poverty Law Center, they fuel it. And it is just so hypocritical and so utterly duplicitous.
You just described our chapter, the history of the Democrats.
Yeah.
And that's a chapter dedicated. We do exactly what you talked about. We go right through the piecemeal of it. But the question we answer is the freed blacks and black Americans were like 95% for the Republican Party.
Mm-hmm.
They voted straight Republican. What happened that the black community switched so abruptly and left the Republicans and started going with the Democrats? and we document that. And at first was FDR and his new deal about saving us from the Depression, which he actually made worse. But he was quite the racist himself. If you'll recall, in 1936, Jesse Owens was the greatest athlete in the world. And then when the Olympic team came back to America, they were all invited to the White House except for the black athletes, including Jesse Owens, the most celebrated athlete in the world, was not welcome to the White House because of FDR's racism. And no one ever wants to talk about that either because FDR is the greatest Democrat ever. He was wonderful, the New Deal, and then JFK brought about a little bit, but then finally Johnson consummated all of that with the black community when he made a deal with Martin Luther King, and that he declared a war on poverty, and we've spent $5 trillion on poverty, and it's worse now today than it was then. So the whole thing, we go through the history of that. We show how the Democrats were so shrewd in switching that and getting the black community on their side. And it's all historic fact, and it's all subterfuge from the Democrat Party.
Man, Sheriff Mack, I hope you don't have dinner plans tonight because we can stay here until breakfast tomorrow morning sifting through this. I have so many things I want to talk to you about. You talked about Nikita Khrushchev. Do you know that he and John Kennedy were back channeling one another and having confidential off-the-record conversations? Because do you know what common bond they shared?
No.
They were both fearful of a nuclear war. They both realized it would not be the end of our country or theirs. It would be literally the end of humanity. Yeah. And they were talking off the record and secretively about how to disarm both countries' nuclear arsenals.
Right.
And then the next thing you know, John Kennedy is savagely. I mean, that's the thing that just really, I was home from the fourth grade. Our listeners are tired of hearing me say it. But I went down to watch television. Had the flu. I got out of bed, went down and watched television with my mom. And we sat there and watched the news flashes come out about the assassination of the president. And as a 10-year-old, I could not put it together. But I'll tell you something else. And I'm not making this up. This is true as God is my witness. It did not make sense to me then.
No, and I was 11, and I said the exact same thing.
Yeah. It on some level, it didn't feel right to me. I mean, I'm not talking about the dastardly deed. I'm just talking about the whole narrative.
Yeah, the whole
didn't
thing
square with me as a 10-year-old. But I just compartmentalized it and said, you're a 10-year-old. You have to learn as you get older. Well, what I learned as I got older was to trust my instincts, because my instinct was absolutely right. And do you agree that our own government, led by Lyndon Baines Johnson, assisted by Allen Dulles, and covered up by J. Edgar Hoover, killed the 35th president of the United States?
I've studied it out a lot, and I've actually been to Dealey Plaza twice.
Me too, and 3 times actually.
And I've been up into the museum and the 5th floor where Oswald supposedly did it. And then I investigated it myself.
Me too.
I was a pretty good investigator. I was a detective. And all my feelings since I was 11 years old about it not making sense even came a much stronger. Every time I looked into it, it became much stronger. And when I was up in the 5th floor, the book depository, supposedly where Oswald fired a shot, I wondered and wondered, and I've never heard anybody else talk about this before. When the motorcade was coming directly towards where Oswald was stationed.
The easiest shot.
Exactly.
The obvious, easy shot.
This white shirt is there. He's coming right for him. And Oswald could have just gone, I mean, he could have done it blindfolded.
And the car was almost stopping as it made the hairpin turn.
Well, yeah. And so when it turned down Elm Street, it turned on Houston, and it's coming right straight at him. Oh, he doesn't take that shot.
It's a sitting duck at that point.
It was a triangulation that didn't even involve him. He was a patsy. and he even said he was a
He
patsy.
said he was a
But
patsy.
now he has a 45-degree angle. He has trees in his way. He has signs in his way. And that's the thing about Dealey Plaza. It's so eerie. It looks exactly like it did back in 1963 when this happened.
I was there just last November for the 62nd, 63rd anniversary of the assassination. And the blown out street curb is still there and unrepaired, where a bullet struck the street curb. Now, that's not one of the 3 bullets. That's the 4th bullet.
Right.
And many people think there were probably 6 bullets that day. But the point that, and here's, I'm not relitigating the Kennedy assassination, although I do frequently.
We're always doing that.
I'm always doing it, but
I
there's
don't think Johnson had much to do with it because he's too stupid.
Well, let me. I don't mean to interrupt you, but let me give you a couple of tidbits on that one. Yeah. He was involved with Billy Saul's Estes in Texas, and they committed fraud against the state of Texas in claiming cotton government subsidies to which they were not entitled. You talk about Minneapolis being a fraud. They invented it back in Texas in 1960.
But Johnson cheated to be senator, and he was a crook all the way around.
Totally. So the agricultural commissioner was investigating Johnson. Kennedy told Ms. Lincoln the day that he left on his trip to Texas that he was not going to have Johnson on the ticket with him, that he was under investigation. The agricultural commissioner was assassinated. He was tried by a jury. The assailant was tried. Mack Wallace was tried by a jury of 12 men and women in Texas. He was unanimously found guilty of committing murder. The judge, a Johnson protege. I'm not done yet. It gets better. The judge, a Johnson protege, releases Mack Wallace from jail and does not send him to prison, commuting his sentence to time served.
Oh my goodness.
No, check it out. It's in Roger Stone's book, The Men Who Killed Kennedy, the case against Lyndon Baines Johnson. And here's the punchline, very significant. There are no fingerprints of Lee Harvey Oswald ever to have been found in the sniper's nest.
Correct.
Guess whose fingerprint is there?
Oh, I didn't know that one. No.
Mack Wallace.
Wow.
End of story.
End of story.
So now, why is that important to me and you and our country 64 years later? Because they're still doing the same kinds of things.
That's right.
I mean, do you believe that Thomas Matthew Crooks took a shot at President Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania, July 13th, 2024?
He may have, but I doubt it. But the way it all went down, it looked like an inside job just because it was such a bungled whole. The security was so obviously bungled that it looked like an inside job. And that's the only thing you could come up with.
Well, I've seen the Secret Service planning document prior to the event. They had a security circle, a radius established around the venue. And conspicuously, the AGR building is cut out of the circle like a piece of pie.
Yeah.
It was not a mistake. It wasn't an act of omission. It was an intentional act of commission to take that building out of the security perimeter, just like they changed the parade route in Dallas when Kennedy went there and put him in a position of being a sitting duck. One cop on that AGR building could have prevented the whole thing. Right. And and the detail was reduced because there were people in Pittsburgh tending to Dr. Jill, who wasn't a doctor and who was not an elected official, but she took Trump, a good portion of Trump's detail. I don't want to get too bogged down in the weeds, and this is your interview,
Well,
not mine. But
this is one of
I got to get this stuff off my chest.
yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm a good therapist.
Thomas Matthew. Well, I want us to be therapists for the nation. Thomas
Yes,
Matthew
of course.
Crooks never had pierced ears. No evidence of it. Every
okay.
picture, no picture, shows him with pierced ears. But Maxwell Urich, who had fought in the Ukraine, who had ties to the CIA, whose parents ran Urich Munitions in Mesa, Arizona, drove a white van to Butler. And right after the shots rang out, the national media named him as a person of interest and showed his white van being towed away from the venue.
Yeah. I never heard of that one.
Maxwell Urich wore gauges, which he had removed from his ears. Now you zoom in on the pictures of the assailant on top of the AGR building. He's got scars on his ears. Thomas Matthew Crooks had no scars. Maxwell Urich likely did from when he wore gauges. Final point, the day after, July the 14th, Maxwell Urich's parents filed a missing persons report on their son. He has never been seen or heard of since. Now,
I had never
what
heard
does that prove? It proves reasonable doubt
Yeah.
about Thomas Matthew Crooks, and no one has investigated it. It's been forgotten. It's been covered up. The mystery to me is the one person on earth who has a reason to know seems disinterested.
Oh, yeah.
Trump doesn't talk about it anymore.
Yeah.
I saw an interview. He said, well, my people looked at it. They said it was Matthew Crooks. So I just have to take them at their word.
Yeah. He doesn't want to be shot again.
Bingo. That if you hadn't said it, I was going to.
Yeah. Well, first of all, you bringing up the JFK assassination and how much it affected both of us.
Yeah.
It did immensely.
Totally.
But there's another key component to that, and I'm sure you'll remember this name, Dorothy Kilgallen.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, she made
I used to watch her on What's My Line?
What's My Line? Yeah, I did too. So you and I are about the same age. I'm 73. You've got to be about 72.
I'm 73. I've just had a birthday.
Oh, we're the same age. Okay. I just turned 73 in December.
Well, you look darn good.
Well, thanks. So do you. But Dorothy Kilgallen is a huge story about JFK. Were you aware of that?
Totally.
Okay. So we bring this up. We did the research for the book because this one's just too glaring. It's too obvious. She died the exact same way that Marilyn Monroe did. Except Marilyn Monroe, they investigated, oh yeah, she committed suicide. With Dorothy Kilgallen, they said it was an accident, but both of them died the exact same way and very, very close to each other date-wise. But Dorothy Kilgallen was a very dogged reporter, and she became a celebrity after she did some worldwide race around the world. Okay. And she did really well. Anyway, that's when she started being on What's My Line. But when this happened to JFK, she actually really liked President Kennedy, and she took it upon herself to do an investigation. And she's the only reporter that ever interviewed Jack Ruby, who supposedly, well, that's pretty obvious that he did kill Lee Harvey Oswald. But he was assigned to take Oswald out by the mafia to make sure that he never was allowed to talk or go to trial because he could have proved that it was a conspiracy. However, what happened to Dorothy Kilgallen is absolutely astonishing. So she has all this investigation. She's about ready to go public with her investigation as to how President Kennedy was actually killed. And then she was murdered. She accidentally, according to the police, she accidentally took barbiturates and drank and accidentally killed herself. But whoever really killed her stole all of her papers and notes of the investigation. Folks, this is huge because it's obvious that they don't want Dorothy Kilgallen to talk and to expose her investigation. So it never went public, and it just was completely covered up, and no one ever investigated how in the world she died or who actually killed her to silence her and to get rid of that investigation. Folks, right then and there is enough to show you, and this is just a small part.
That's
It's
just
like,
this one chapter
it's just
in a very long
tiny part.
treatise.
Exactly.
Well,
And
Dorothy
and the
Kilgallen,
Democrat Party has continued this kind of crap ever since. And
totally.
before.
You and I, oh gosh, Sheriff Mack, I'm so glad God's brought us together. We think the same, and I can finish your sentences. November 22nd, 1963 was the day that America lost its innocence.
Correct.
And the Warren Commission, and the day
Well,
it
by
was
the way,
published.
she called the Warren Commission a joke.
Yeah, because it was.
Yeah.
And the day that it was published is the day that American politicians and bureaucrats became untouchable. Because that document conveyed to every bureaucrat in America that if you've got power, and it doesn't really matter how much or where, you can use it and literally get away with murder.
Yep.
And we're seeing it played out over and over and over again. Now, I'm a huge supporter of law enforcement. When I went into English Avenue in 2006, the first thing we did was to renovate a very nice house, and we installed 2 police officers to live there rent-free, and it changed the whole dynamic. So I want to preface it with that, but I'm also more a supporter of the United States Constitution. And there is a guy on YouTube, a civil rights lawyer, that goes around the country investigating and picking apart cases of police overreach, misuse of authority. And it seems to me to be almost an epidemic now. Not all cops, just the bad ones, are abusing people's civil liberties. And they're doing so recklessly, callously, and deliberately in spite of Supreme Court established doctrine.
Well,
and
see,
it is alarming to me.
That's why we formed the Constitutional Sheriff Organization, to combat that, so that we actually have guards of the Constitution and the protectors of civil rights in some counties all across this country. And that was the exact intent of what we're doing.
Good for you. Because I also worked, the stimulus behind me getting involved in English Avenue was that 6 Atlanta police officers entered the home of 92-year-old Catherine Johnston. And she was lived in the hood. She lived in fear of being broken into. It was a rough neighborhood. Heroin was openly dealt on the street corners. And she had a rusted out pistol. She didn't know how to use it. She kept it by her side. And when somebody started bashing down the front door of her house, she reached for that pistol, fired one shot that actually went into the ceiling. The police broke in and pumped her full of 32 rounds of ammunition. You're welcome to Google it. Catherine Johnston, Atlanta, Georgia. Her name will come up prominently, and those 6 officers went to prison. Some of them are still in prison because they planted marijuana in the basement of her house and claimed that her grandson was dealing out of her home. Well, that story lasted about 5 minutes because it turned out he was a straight A student and literally an Eagle Scout. So it was just a horrible miscarriage of justice. They made a mistake. It was shoddy police work, and they lied on their application for a no-knock warrant. And they just got the address wrong. And a lot of the facts were wrong that they put into their affidavit. So then the cover-up ensued. But that's what really heightened me to how far bad cops will go to lie and cover up their breaking of the law.
Yeah. And And that's part of my books. I wrote the proper role of law enforcement. I wrote the County Sheriff, America's Last Hope. Probably another powerful book. Are You a David? About the biblical David. But are we Davids today? Will we take on Goliath? Well, I took on Goliath when I sued the Clinton administration back when I was sheriff in Arizona, and we won a case at the U.S. Supreme Court. And I want all of your listeners to know probably the most powerful book besides the Bible and a pocket constitution is this little thing. And this little pamphlet here is a review copy of the highlights of my Supreme Court victory. And that's available at our website. You won't find this anyplace else except our website, cspoa.org, cspoa.org. And every American should join the CSPOA. This is an organization for you. It's to work with local law enforcement, especially sheriffs, to create what Madison said, erect the barriers against the encroachments of the national authority. Folks, we have to have sheriffs that defend the Constitution, erect the barriers, and protect you from all enemies, both foreign and domestic. That is what we do. This is why we wrote the book now, risking our lives to write this book, The Democrat Murder of America, because they are doing everything they can to kill the American dream, to kill what the founding fathers established for our country, and the liberties that these men raised up for that very purpose by God Almighty to establish the greatest country in the world, and the foundation of which is our Constitution, which was also inspired by God. And so what are they doing? They're destroying our Constitution, they're destroying our foundation, and they're doing everything they can to create a communist takeover of America, and using fear and murder and conspiracies, and allowing all of these criminals to come into our country during the Biden administration. Folks, they brought in the terrorists, international terrorists, who have created sleeper cells now. They brought in the cartels. They brought in the human traffickers. They did the pedophiles that now control the sexual slavery market for the world, and they brought them into our country. And folks, it couldn't be any worse if it had to be. And now we're exposing all of that in this book. And the most important thing, though, we, in the last chapter, the epilogue, create and show you the solution. There is a peaceful and effective solution. But folks, first of all, we have to know the truth. So
Totally.
get a copy of the book and then join us. And literally, we've all got to be on the same page, excuse the pun. But that's why you need to read the book.
And listen to The Truth every Saturday and Sunday from noon to 2 on the John Fredericks Radio Network and live streamed across the web. Now, so I want to get to the epilogue in just a second, but
I've been on John Fredericks too.
Oh, good. I'm sure you have. I've got an important question to ask you.
Okay.
Why and who?
Why is because evil people just have to keep doing evil things. And there's always been a conspiracy, almost since day one of America's foundation, to destroy her. And the reason why is because America was based on godly principles. And of course, the demonic nature of some people wanted to make sure that that was destroyed. They've tried ever since.
Historically, what incident, what episodes or what evidence are you citing? Other than the things that we've talked about, but I want to know, I keep looking for the puppet master. I keep trying to find the wizard. And worse, I can't find the wizard. I can't even find the curtain. I don't know where to look. I've got suspicions.
Yeah, so do I.
I know people that are in the chain, but I just don't know who's
Well, one is
pulling
George
the threads.
Soros. The contemporary is George Soros. But when you look back through history and you look at the horrible things that have happened, even the cheating in elections.
Georgia 2020.
Yeah, well, way back, even before then.
Sure. Oh, definitely.
Rutherford B. Hayes and the cheating that happened there, and the cheating that happened to get, like we said, Lyndon Baines Johnson in. The only reason he ever served at all is because he cheated to become senator in Texas. And the racism of these people and the horrible things that uh, President Jackson, Andrew Jackson, did. Even back then, he was the seventh president of the United States. And the Trail of Tears that he went after Native Americans and killed thousands of them. And so you just keep looking at what the Democrat Party did ever since it was formed in 1823 to support slavery as they did. And yet now the whole reversal of the 90% of the blacks, 85% now, maybe, and Trump has helped maybe get it back down to 80.
Mm-hmm.
Racism and the racial divide and divisiveness and the hate promoted through the two-party system. And the Democrats have taken this to such extremes, the extremism of the Democrat Party and their wokeness. And look at just the stupidity and sanity of having men play in female sports and what the Democrat Party has done to destroy the dreams of these women who now are forced, or they're labeled as racists and bigots if they don't support men playing in their leagues and teams and same sports. It has gone so wacko that and all of this is to destroy America. Every bit of
100%. I still need to know who. I think I've got the why. They clearly want to destroy America, but I've got a suspicion that it could very well be the Chinese, that these people may be proxies and bad actors for the Chinese. You know, Peter Schweitzer, who's written several very compelling books, he's written over 23 books, sat right across from my desk here in the studio a couple of months ago talking about China. They are definitely bad actors. I guess, you know, I side with Trump. You know, Biden never went to China. He never engaged with China. All he did was take their money and allow their spy balloons to float over our military bases undeterred, and let the borders open to allow 150,000 fit military-age Chinese men walk across our southern border, who are still here in the heartland of America, hiding.
They're here.
Yeah. And so they would probably be my number one suspect, but I'm not sure it's just them.
Russia and China, but you could look at George Soros and where the funding has gone. Look at all of the woke DAs. There's over 100 that were funded by George Soros, and now we have a good sheriff in Las Vegas of all places. Kevin McMahill as the first sheriff in America to stand up to the judges and say, no, I will not release these people. I'm not releasing career criminals back into society so that they can victimize more people in my county. And he told 4 different judges, no, he would not do that anymore. 11 different times on 11 different inmates that he said, I'm not putting these people back on the streets. And so now that's going to court. But we had a courageous sheriff do his job. And yes, I met with him before this happened, and I explained to him what we're doing with constitutional sheriffs nationwide. Folks, this is part of the solution. It's peaceful and effective, but you've got to be involved in the process. If the American people aren't involved in the solution and the holy cause of liberty, according to Thomas Jefferson, we will not be successful in preserving the America that we were born in. Folks, America is on her deathbed, and we can revive her, but we've got to get together and we've got to know the truth. And this is the reason we wrote this book. We wrote it for you, but we also wrote it for the good Democrats who are being hoodwinked and brainwashed by the Democrat Party. And why they continue to do this. We just had a reporter say, man, I'm so glad that this Platt guy is running for mayor and he's a Democrat. And he voted for Bass. And he said, I'm so glad he's there because he's straightening the Democrat Party out. I'm still going to vote for the Democrat, but we're really glad this Republican is straightening everybody out. He can't get past the brainwashedness of his own life to realize that voting for the Republican would be the best way to save that office there.
Well,
this
and
is
why do
outrageous
Jews
stuff.
continue
They
to
can't do it.
And why did Jewish people continue to vote Democrat when
Oh, I
Trump
know.
moved the embassy to Jerusalem like he promised to do, and he forged the Abraham Accords, and he's neutering Israel's greatest threat in Iran.
They can't do it.
It's
So the
bewildering.
enemy, an enemy hath done this, and it's the enemy from within right now. But it's George Soros getting all these woke attorneys, these woke judges, and now we have a sign from Sheriff McMahill. What's the answer? Sheriffs, unite and wake up
yeah.
and join us in this cause of liberty. But
I've
American
always
people,
felt like sheriffs were the last defense, maybe the first, maybe the first and the last.
first and last.
Yeah. So I commend your work. One final topic. I know we've run long. Thank you for the generosity of your time. And you have enthused me. You are a tremendous role model, and everything you say is what has been on my mind. And that is the message. If we're going to save the country, you can't let Donald Trump do it for you. He can't do it by himself. We have got to coalesce as a nation and rally behind him, which I think we are doing in real time right now. Do you know that he is, let's see, what's the number? 110 or 112 to 0 in the endorsements that he has made all over the country in governor's races, U.S. Senate, and congressional races. What's his name in Texas just won?
Quickly, let me throw this in there. And he's the only president that has a mental disorder named after him.
Yeah, exactly. Derangement syndrome. Ken Paxton just won and turned out Corrin, who is a consummate deep stater, and he has been there with Thune blocking the Save America Act.
Yeah.
Why would two Republicans not want the Save America Act to pass so we can have honest, free, fair elections, which is a cornerstone of our republic?
Exactly.
Thank God he's gone. And I think that Ken Paxton will be a good senator. He's running against a complete lunatic who is in favor of everything you just ranted about in a good way. Men and women's sports, sex changes for kids that don't have to have parental consent, on and on and on. It's lunacy. I just don't think this is organic. I really don't. My instinct as a 10-year-old that we talked about, my instinct as a 73-year-old is that this nonsense, this illogical nonsense is sponsored. And I just don't think that George Soros on his own is capable of masterminding this plan that is obviously being executed by someone.
And we're never going to know all the who's.
Well, we can know. This is the thing that really pisses me off. We catch people dead-handed. Adam Schiff. We know now because of Tulsi Gabbard declassifying a document, proof positive that Schiff lied to the American people and brought us through the fake impeachment and the $40 million Mueller investigation that was premised on the lie that Schiff knew. Why is he not under indictment?
Yeah, exactly. And Alejandro Mayorkas and Merrick Garland and many others.
Joe Biden.
But
and his chief of staff and the people that worked in the White House that knew that they
can't stand trial. He's not competent to stand trial, but the rest of them can. Yeah. And they lied about it. And they were the president. He was not. He was never the president. He wasn't capable of doing it. And they all knew it. That's the biggest crime ever committed against the American people. We've got to, folks.
All right. So last thing, I'm not cutting you off. I just got to get to it.
Go.
I have a concern, and less so today than I did a month ago, because the Republicans, they talk about Trump being so down in the polls and his approval being so low, but the voters have validated President Trump by electing 110 or 112 of the people that he has endorsed. He has not lost. We have not lost a single race where he has endorsed a candidate. So I think that there is a continuing wave of good people coming to the fight. But I am concerned that the subject of immigration, the thing that got him elected, if we do lose in midterms, could be a related cause to a loss in November. And that is, we got 20 million illegals here. Maybe it's 18 million now that have been deported or left voluntarily. But some of the ways that the deportations have been conducted offend my sensibilities.
Right.
They locked up a guy who I personally know in Palm Beach, who's been here 30 years. He's the general manager of Beach A Restaurant, which is a national chain of fine dining Italian restaurants. He got stopped for the windshield of his nephew's car he was riding in had too much tint. They stopped him. They detained them. They eventually turned them over to ICE, and he was sent to Alligator Alcatraz, where he ate off a cement floor in a cardboard box for 3 days, until the people of Palm Beach expressed such overwhelming outrage. And these are mostly Republicans.
Yeah.
Mostly, and I'm talking about rich, really rich Republicans, expressed such outrage that they released him in 3 days. He's back at his job at Beach A. Now, I don't know his status as an alien, but I know he's been here 30 years. He owns property. He has family. He has broken no laws except possibly the law about that he broke when he came here. I don't know that, though. But others have similarly performed, and they've got roots and tentacles in the communities in which they live. It seems like a virtually impossible task the way that it's being done now. Is there the possibility of a more considered, thoughtful process to register people and classify them and handle their deportations on some sort of a hierarchical basis? Or am I just wishing for the tooth fairy?
No, I think that's legitimate. It's a legitimate question, and I think it's a legitimate process, and it can be. But he should be going to someone. He should be getting a lawyer.
He's got one, as does his brother who works next door to him.
They should both be taking that to court and finding whatever money they need to spend to become citizens. Take the time and effort to do it right, and make sure the documentation is there. And there is a process for doing that.
Well, one of the problems in the current path to citizenship, or even a work permit, from what I understand, that I think is a real barrier that needs to be looked at and maybe revised, is that you have to go back to your country of origin to apply. Well, you can go back to Guatemala or Colombia, Venezuela, and apply. A lot of them are going to get killed.
Yeah,
they'll disappear.
And he needs to let them know right up front. The asylum seekers and people who need asylum don't have to go back. The attorneys can take care of this, and it's definitely a process that's there. And so yes, I've said the same thing. I've run into friends and family that were trying to help people do the same thing. And so look, this is still America, and it's a fair and honest process. They do not need to self-deport. Just get the lawyers to make the requests, and it can happen. Yes,
man. I tell you, and I'm not trying to suck up to you, Sheriff Mack. I don't know that there's anything that you can do for me personally, but I am so in awe. We have to be brothers by a different mother, because our DNA is like identical. You and I see it the same on every topic. And I'm just so grateful for your coming on today. I want to be one of your warriors. You're right. The American people have got to maintain this country and our freedoms if they're going to survive. And just in closing, I think, and you touched on it, my sense is that the day we really got into trouble as a country is the day the Supreme Court ruled that prayer in school was unconstitutional. We saw a decline of the morality in this country starting, coincidentally or not, at that juncture. We've got to get it back. And I
And
think
the follow up to that was Roe v. Wade.
100%. We're seeing a return to what I would call normalcy. Millennials are returning to the church. And my own son, who's 38 and has given me every gray hair I've got, I love him, but he was bad as a teenager and a kid. He now teaches Bible study. I am so proud of this guy. But other millennials are following the same pursuit. Here it is, folks, The Democrat Murder of America by Sheriff Mack and his co-writer Daniel Perkins. I hope you'll be frequent guest on The Truth, and I'm sure I speak for our audience. Just a big thank you for everything that you're doing.
Well, thank you too. And again, you want to be one of our warriors. We want everybody to join CSPOA. Everyone should be a warrior. Join our posse at CSPOA.org. Get the book, and let's get on the same page. First, know the truth, and then we establish a solution together. And folks, this is all now about saving our country. We can do it. God bless us as we do.
www.cspoa.org. I will be your very next member. And while I'm there, is that where I can download the ebook? Or do I go to www.murderofamerica.com?
Go to Murder of America and you can download it right then and there.
Okay. Well, I've got my homework to do. I'm on it. And again, thank you, Sheriff Mack. And you ever come to the East Coast?
Yes, especially if somebody invites me.
Well, look, I'm not boastful. I'm not trying to be immodest, but I just finished a pretty darn nice house. And it's got a guest wing. You can bring your wife. We won't even know you're there. You can come and stay as long as you want. I don't know. Do you have an adult beverage once in a while?
I've got a brother who lives in Duluth, Georgia, right outside Atlanta.
Yeah, well, Atlanta has been my home for the last 45 years. I raised my family there and still have my businesses there. But I'm in West Palm Beach, Florida now, and the views are spectacular. The weather's getting a little toasty, but coming from Arizona, I think you can deal with it. And
we can.
Come on down and we'll have an adult beverage together and we'll solve a lot more problems. Thank you for coming on The Truth.